In the grand ballroom of Ashford Hall, beneath the glow of 1,000 candles, Miss Beatrice Harlow stood alone. The silk of her gown, a pale green borrowed from her cousin, whispered against the marble floor as she pressed herself closer to the potted ferns. She had learned long ago that the shadows were kinder than the light. Around her, London society swirled in patterns as precise as the music itself. Ladies in jewels worth more than kingdoms, gentlemen whose names appeared in history books, and Beatrice, the orphaned niece of Baron Harlow, a man too distant to care and too poor to provide anything beyond the barest charity. "Look at her," a voice drifted from behind a fan. Lady Constance Worthing, her words sharp as cut glass. 23 years old, and not a single prospect. Poor thing. Poor indeed, added Miss Helena Ashford, the hostess's daughter. Without beauty or fortune, what man would look twice? Beatrice's fingers tightened around her reticule. Inside lay a single handkerchief, a broken pencil, and 3 shillings. Her entire worldly possessions amounted to less than what these women spent on their morning tea. "You'll never find a husband," Lady Constance said louder now, clearly intending Beatrice to hear. "Girls like you are destined for the quiet life, companion to some elderly aunt, perhaps, or governess to ungrateful children." The laughter that followed was delicate, refined, and absolutely devastating. Beatrice fought the burning behind her eyes. She would not cry, not here, not where they could see and add her tears to tomorrow's gossip. Instead, she focused on the painting above the fireplace, a pastoral scene, green fields and distant sheep, freedom she could never touch. "She hasn't even the wit to know she doesn't belong," Helena continued, emboldened by her audience. "My mother invited her out of obligation to the Baron. Charity, really." "How noble of Lady Ashford," Lady Constance replied with mock sweetness, "though I dare say the girl should have declined. Watching others dance when one will never be asked must be torture." Beatrice's face burned. They were right, of course. In 3 hours not a single gentleman had approached her. Not for conversation, not for refreshment, certainly not for dancing. She was invisible, except when she served as entertainment for cruel tongues. From across the ballroom, another figure observed the scene with growing displeasure. Adrian Thornwood, Duke of Silvermere, stood apart from the revelry, his tall frame radiating the kind of power that came from wealth beyond measure and bloodlines traced to William the Conqueror. "Your Grace," simpered Lady Margaret Fairfax, approaching with her daughter in tow, "my Rosalind was just saying how she hoped you might favour her with a dance." The Duke's expression remained impassive. "I have not yet decided to dance this evening, Lady Fairfax." "Oh, but surely—" "Excuse me," he interrupted, his attention fixed on something across the room, on someone. He had noticed Miss Beatrice Harlow the moment she arrived, had watched her shrink into the shadows while others glittered in the light, had observed the careful way she held herself as though making her body as small as her presence. And now he heard the whispers, saw the cruel smiles, recognized the systematic destruction of a young woman's spirit for the entertainment of those who should know better. Lady Constance's voice carried clearly, "I wonder if she even knows how to dance. Perhaps no one ever taught her. One must pay for dancing lessons, after all." That was the moment the Duke of Silvermere made his decision. He began to move. The crowd parted instinctively before him. Conversations faltered, fans stilled, even the orchestra seemed to soften, as though the very air acknowledged his approach. Beatrice, lost in her misery, did not notice. She was planning her escape. Another quarter hour, and she could claim a headache, return to her tiny room in the Baron's distant wing. Disappear until the next obligatory social event. Miss Harlow. The voice was deep, commanding, and directly beside her. She turned to find the Duke of Silvermere standing not 3 feet away, his dark eyes fixed upon her with an intensity that stole her breath. Every person in the ballroom had stopped what they were doing. Every eye turned toward this impossible scene. "Your Grace," Beatrice managed, dropping into a curtsy that trembled slightly. Her mind raced. Why was he here? Had she committed some offense? Stood in the wrong place? "I find myself in need of a dancing partner," the Duke said, his voice carrying across the hushed assembly, "and I would be honored if you would accept." The silence was absolute. Even the orchestra had stopped mid-note. Beatrice stared at him, certain she had misheard. "Your Grace, surely you meant—" "I meant you, Miss Harlow," his hand extended, gloved and steady, "unless you are otherwise engaged." Behind her, Beatrice heard Lady Constance's sharp intake of breath, felt the shock radiating from Helena Ashford, sensed the entire ton holding its collective breath. "I am not engaged," she whispered, hardly daring to believe this was happening. "Then may I have this dance?" Her hand, small and unadorned by rings or jewels, settled into his. The Duke's fingers closed around hers with surprising gentleness. "I should warn you," Beatrice said quietly as he led her toward the floor. "I am not accomplished. My lessons were limited." "Then we shall be perfectly matched," he replied, just as quietly. "For I care nothing about accomplishment and everything about courage. And you, Miss Harlow, have shown more courage tonight than anyone else in this room." The orchestra resumed at a signal from Lady Ashford, who looked as though she might faint from the shock of it all. The Duke drew Beatrice into position for the waltz, his hand at her waist. Their joined hands raised, and then they began to move. Beatrice had lied. She was not unskilled. Her steps, while perhaps not as polished as those of ladies who could afford daily lessons, were true and graceful. But more than that, something happened when she danced with the Duke. They fit. His height complemented hers perfectly. His lead was clear but gentle, giving her confidence, and when she dared to glance up at his face, she found him looking at her, not with pity or obligation, but with something that resembled interest. "Why did you do this?" she asked softly, so only he could hear. "You have made me the subject of scandal." "I have made you the subject of envy," he corrected. "There is a difference. They will say terrible things about both of us. Let them." His voice held no concern whatsoever. "I have learned that society's opinion matters only if one grants it power, and I do not." Around them, other couples had tentatively returned to the floor, but everyone maintained a careful distance, creating a bubble around the Duke and his unlikely partner. The better to observe, the better to gossip later. Lady Constance stood rigid near the refreshment table, her face the color of spoiled milk. Helena Ashford had retreated to her mother's side, both wearing expressions of profound confusion. How had the evening's entertainment become the evening's sensation? "You are kind to say it doesn't matter," Beatrice replied, pulling her attention back to her partner. "But tomorrow, when you wake in your grand house with your grand life, you will remember this differently. I will be the charity case you pitied, the poor relation you rescued for an evening before forgetting entirely." The Duke's expression hardened slightly, not with anger at her, but at the worldview her words revealed. A worldview shaped by years of casual cruelty. "Miss Harlow," he said, his voice low and intent, "I am many things. Wealthy, yes. Privileged beyond measure. But I am not a man given to meaningless gestures or temporary kindnesses. When I choose to act, I do so with purpose. And what purpose could this serve? That remains to be seen." The music swelled toward its conclusion. The Duke spun her once, twice, her borrowed skirts billowing like sea foam. When the final note faded, he did not immediately release her. Instead, he bowed over her hand with a formality that elevated the gesture to something almost courtly. "Thank you, Miss Harlow," he said clearly, ensuring his words carried. "This has been the most genuine enjoyment I have had all season." Before she could respond, he was gone, returning to the shadows from which he'd emerged, leaving Beatrice standing alone on the dance floor with her heart pounding and her mind spinning. The whispers began immediately. "Did you see? The Duke of Silvermere, Miss Harlow of all people. What could it mean?" Lady Constance pushed through the crowd, her expression now one of forced warmth. "Miss Harlow, I had no idea you were acquainted with His Grace. You must tell us everything." Beatrice looked at the woman, who minutes before had been mocking her mercilessly, saw the calculation in her eyes, the sudden interest now that the Duke had shown favor. "There is nothing to tell," Beatrice said quietly. "His Grace was kind enough to dance with me. That is all." "But surely he said something," Helena pressed, joining them with equal false sweetness. "Some indication of his interest." "His interest is his own business," Beatrice replied, surprised by her own boldness. "As is mine. Now, if you will excuse me, I find I am tired." She left them standing there, mouths slightly agape, and made her way toward the exit. Her hands were shaking, her pulse raced. Everything had changed, though she couldn't yet comprehend how or why. What she didn't see, as she departed, was the Duke watching from the shadows, watching and making plans. The morning sun crept through thin curtains into Beatrice's small room. She woke slowly, for a moment believing the previous night had been a dream. But no, the borrowed green dress hung over her chair, and the memory was too vivid to be false. The Duke of Silvermere had danced with her, had chosen her, publicly and deliberately, before all of London society. A sharp knock interrupted her thoughts. "Miss Beatrice," called her maid, Martha, a girl barely 16 who served the entire household. "You're wanted downstairs. The Baron wishes to see you immediately." Beatrice's stomach clenched. Her uncle never sent for her unless something was wrong. She dressed quickly in her plainest day dress and hurried down the narrow back stairs to the Baron's study. Baron Harlow sat behind his desk, his face red with emotion she couldn't quite read. Beside him stood his wife, Lady Harlow, whose expression was decidedly cold. "Sit," the Baron commanded, gesturing to a straight-backed chair. Beatrice obeyed, her hands folded carefully in her lap. Whatever was coming, she would face it with dignity. "Explain yourself," Lady Harlow said sharply. "What did you do last night?" "I attended the ball, as you instructed." "Don't play innocent," her aunt snapped. "You somehow managed to entrap the Duke of Silvermere into dancing with you. The entire household has heard. The scandal." "Scandal?" Baron Harlow interrupted, his voice curious. "Wife, I believe you misunderstand the situation." He withdrew a cream-colored envelope from his desk. Beatrice recognized the weight of the paper immediately. Expensive, the kind used only by the very wealthy. "This arrived by special messenger an hour ago," the Baron continued, "addressed to me regarding you." Beatrice's mouth went dry. "What does it say?" "It is an invitation." The Baron read, his voice taking on a note of wonder. "The Duke of Silvermere requests permission to call upon Miss Beatrice Harlow this afternoon at 2 o'clock, for the purpose of better acquaintance." The room fell silent. Even Lady Harlow seemed struck speechless. "That's impossible," Beatrice whispered. "He doesn't even know me." "And yet," the Baron said, rereading the letter as though to confirm its contents, "here it is, in his own hand, bearing his seal." Lady Harlow recovered first, her expression shifting rapidly from shock to calculation. "Well, this changes matters considerably." "Indeed it does," the Baron agreed. "Beatrice, you will receive the Duke in the East Parlour. We shall have tea prepared. Your best dress." "She has only the one decent dress," Lady Harlow interrupted. "The blue one. It will have to do. Martha can press it. And for heaven's sake, child, do something with your hair." Beatrice sat frozen. This couldn't be happening. The Duke was simply being kind. Surely he didn't actually intend to court her. Men like him married women like Eleanor Ashford or Lady Rosalind Fairfax, women with dowries and connections and beauty, not orphaned nieces who lived on charity and owned 3 shillings to their name. "Why are you still sitting there?" Lady Harlow demanded. "You have 4 hours to make yourself presentable. Go." Beatrice fled. In her room, Martha helped her bathe and dress, chattering excitedly the entire time. "A duke, miss? Imagine, everyone below stairs is talking about it. Cook says she'll make her best cakes. Mr. Peters says the silver must be polished. It's like royalty coming to call." But Beatrice couldn't share the excitement. She felt only dread, because when the Duke arrived and realized she was exactly what society said she was, plain, poor and unremarkable, he would leave, and the humiliation of his departure would be worse than any mockery Lady Constance could devise. At precisely 2 o'clock, the Duke of Silvermere's carriage arrived. Beatrice watched from behind the parlour curtain as he stepped down, his tall frame unmistakable even from a distance. He wore a coat of dark blue superfine, his boots polished to mirror brightness. Everything about him spoke of wealth and power, and he was coming to see her. The butler announced him. His Grace, the Duke of Silvermere. Beatrice stood, curtsying deeply as he entered. The Baron and Lady Harlow had positioned themselves nearby, ostensibly for propriety, though Beatrice suspected they simply wanted to witness this impossible scene. "Miss Harlow," the Duke said, bowing over her hand. "Thank you for receiving me." "Your Grace," she managed. "The honor is mine." He settled into the chair across from her, accepting tea from a servant who trembled so badly the cup rattled against the saucer. Once they were alone, or as alone as propriety allowed, with her aunt and uncle pretending not to eavesdrop from across the room, the Duke spoke. "I imagine you found my request surprising." "That is an understatement, Your Grace." A hint of amusement touched his features. "I prefer directness, Miss Harlow. It's refreshing. So let me be direct in return. Last night, I witnessed society's casual cruelty toward you. I also witnessed your grace under pressure, your dignity in the face of deliberate humiliation. These qualities interest me far more than a large dowry or impeccable connections." Beatrice studied him carefully. "Your Grace, forgive me, but I am not a charity project. If you seek to rescue me from my circumstances out of pity—" "Pity?" He seemed genuinely surprised. "Miss Harlow, if I felt pity, I would have sent you money or arranged a situation elsewhere. I am here because I find myself intrigued by you, by your character, by the person you have remained despite every reason society has given you to become bitter or defeated." "You know nothing about me," she said softly. "Then allow me to learn." He leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes intent. "Tell me about yourself, your interests, your thoughts. Not the practiced responses of a debutante seeking to impress, but the real you." Beatrice hesitated. Every instinct warned her that this was dangerous, that hoping for anything more than this single afternoon was folly. But something in his expression, in the genuine curiosity she saw there, made her brave. "I like to read," she began slowly. My uncle's library is old and poorly maintained, but it's vast. I've read everything there twice over. History, philosophy, even medical texts. I know it's not proper for ladies, but no one notices what I do, so no one stops me. What do you think of the Reform Acts? He asked, surprising her. I think they don't go far enough, she replied before she could stop herself. Then, horrified, forgive me, Your Grace. That was inappropriate. It was honest, he corrected. And I agree with you. Continue. What else? And so she did. Hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, Beatrice spoke of her ideas, her observations, her views on everything from literature to politics to the state of London's poor. The Duke listened, really listened, asking questions that showed he valued her opinions. An hour passed, then two. The Baron and Lady Harlow had long since departed, likely realizing this was no ordinary social call. Miss Harlow, the Duke said at last, rising to depart, I would very much like to call upon you again. Tomorrow, if you would permit it. Your Grace, she replied, standing as well. I must ask, why are you doing this? What do you gain from spending time with an orphaned nobody? He regarded her steadily. I gain the pleasure of intelligent conversation with someone who hasn't been trained to tell me only what I want to hear. I gain the company of a woman whose worth has nothing to do with her bank account, and perhaps, he added, his voice softening, I gain the hope that not everything in this world is as mercenary and cold as society would have us believe. After he left, Beatrice sank into her chair, her mind reeling. What had just happened? Could it possibly be real? From the doorway, Lady Harlow appeared, her expression unreadable. He will call again tomorrow. You will wear the blue dress again, and Beatrice, she paused, do not embarrass this family. If the Duke is fool enough to show interest in you, do not give him reason to reconsider. But as Beatrice climbed the stairs to her small room, she carried with her something she hadn't possessed before. Hope. The Duke called the next day, and the day after that. Within a week, his visits to Baron Harlow's modest townhouse had become routine. Within 2 weeks, all of London was talking. It's disgraceful, Lady Constance declared at Lady Pemberton's afternoon salon. A duke of his standing, courting a girl with no prospects whatsoever. Perhaps he knows something we don't, suggested Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore, a widow known for her sharp wit. Perhaps he values character over coin. Character doesn't run an estate. Lady Constance sniffed. Character doesn't restore ancestral homes or maintain one's position. The Duke is making a grave error, and someone must help him see reason. That someone, as it turned out, was Lady Constance herself. The 8th time the Duke called, Beatrice received him as usual, in the east parlour, but today something was different. He seemed distracted, his usual attentiveness clouded by some concern. Your Grace, she said gently, is something wrong? He sighed, a sound of weariness that made him seem suddenly less like an untouchable duke and more like a man carrying heavy burdens. I received a visitor this morning, he admitted. Lady Constance Worthing, she came to warn me. Beatrice's stomach dropped. Warn you? About you? He met her eyes directly. She suggested that you were manipulating me, that you had designs on my fortune, that your every word and action was calculated to entrap me into an advantageous marriage. The room tilted. Beatrice gripped the arm of her chair, fighting against the wave of humiliation. Of course this had been too good to be true. I see, she managed, her voice thin. And you believed her? No. She looked up, startled. I didn't believe her, the Duke repeated firmly. I told her that my friendships and my future were none of her concern. I told her that I found her interference presumptuous and her accusations without merit, and then I asked her to leave. You defended me. Of course I did. He seemed genuinely puzzled that she would think otherwise. Beatrice, he used her given name for the first time. In the weeks I've known you, you have never once asked me for anything. You have never hinted at wanting gifts or security. You haven't even asked why I continue to call. Do you know how rare that is? She shook her head, unable to speak. Every debutante in London sees me as a title and a fortune. You see me as a person. You argue with me about philosophy. You correct my opinions on Shakespeare. You treat me like an equal. Despite the vast difference in our circumstances, that is not manipulation. That is authenticity, and I treasure it. Your Grace. Adrian, he interrupted. When we are private, please call me Adrian. Adrian, she whispered, testing his name. What are you saying? He moved to sit beside her, close enough that she could smell the scent of his soap, clean and masculine. I am saying that Lady Constance's visit clarified something for me. I don't simply enjoy your company. I have come to depend on it, to look forward to these afternoons as the best part of my day, and I would very much like to know if you might feel the same. Beatrice's heart hammered against her ribs. I do, she admitted, but I'm afraid. Of what? Of this ending. Of waking up to discover it was all a dream. Of society finding new ways to tear us apart. She met his eyes, her own bright with unshed tears. They will never accept me, Adrian. They will make your life miserable if you continue this association. Then let them be miserable, he said simply. I choose you, Beatrice. Not in spite of your circumstances, but because of who you are within them. You are brave and intelligent and kind. You are everything I never knew I was searching for. I have nothing to offer you, she whispered. You have everything that matters. He took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. I am not asking you to decide anything today, but I want you to know my intentions are honorable and serious. I want to court you properly, to give you time to know me as I am coming to know you. And when enough time has passed, I hope you will allow me to ask you a very important question. Beatrice couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the warmth of his hand in hers and the impossible reality of his words. I will not be rushed, she managed. I will not be grateful enough to say yes without meaning it. I would expect nothing less. He replied, smiling now. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. But society, as it turned out, had other plans. The rumors started small. A whisper here, an innuendo there, but they grew, spreading like poison through London's drawing rooms. She trapped him somehow, used feminine wiles to compromise him. The Duke is too much a gentleman to abandon her now. Poor man, shackled to that creature. Beatrice heard them all. Heard them, and felt each word like a physical blow. But worse than the rumors were their effects. The Duke's man of business sent a carefully worded letter expressing concern about the family's reputation. His solicitor hinted that a marriage to someone of Miss Harlowe's standing might affect his parliamentary influence. Even his own mother, the Dowager Duchess, sent word from the country estate requesting he visit urgently. Beatrice watched it all unfold with growing horror. She was destroying him, not with intention, but simply by existing in his orbit. When the Duke called on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, she had made her decision. Adrian, she began before he could even sit. This must end. He froze. What? Your family is concerned. Your business interests are threatened. Your reputation is suffering. All because of me. She forced herself to meet his eyes. I release you from any sense of obligation. You have been nothing but kind, but I cannot allow you to sacrifice everything for someone of my insignificance. You are not insignificant, he said sharply. I am to society, and society is what gives you your power, your influence, your ability to do good. She stood, moving to the window so she wouldn't have to see his face. I have thought about this carefully. If you truly care for me, then do this. End our association now, cleanly. Marry someone appropriate. I will be fine. I have survived this long on my own. No. The single word, flat and absolute, startled her into turning. I said no. The Duke stood as well, his expression harder than she had ever seen it. You do not get to decide this for both of us. You do not get to sacrifice yourself on the altar of my convenience. I'm trying to save you. I don't want to be saved. His voice rose, shocking them both. He took a breath, visibly controlling himself. Beatrice, do you remember what I told you? That I am not a man given to meaningless gestures. She nodded, unable to speak. Then believe me when I say this. He crossed to her, taking both her hands in his. I have lived 32 years, according to society's rules. I have been the perfect duke, the ideal heir. I have sacrificed my own desires again and again for duty and propriety, and I have been profoundly unhappy. Adria, let me finish, he said gently. You have shown me what it means to live authentically, to value truth over appearance. You have given me something I didn't even know I needed. Hope, joy, the possibility of a marriage based on genuine affection rather than strategic alliance. But your family will adapt. My mother is formidable, but even she cannot argue with happiness. As for the rest, he shrugged. I have discovered that I care far less about society's opinion than I thought. They will never accept me, Beatrice said, tears spilling now. You will lose friends, opportunities, respect, and gain everything that truly matters. He cupped her face gently, brushing away tears with his thumb. Beatrice, I am asking you to be brave with me, to stand with me against the whispers and the judgment, because I believe what we have is worth fighting for. What if I fail you, she whispered. What if I'm not strong enough? You are the strongest person I know, he replied. You have endured years of what I'm only now beginning to face, and you have done so with grace. If anyone is strong enough, it's you. For a long moment, Beatrice stood silent, weighing the impossible choice before her. Safety in obscurity versus the terrifying possibility of happiness. Finally, she spoke. If we do this, we do it properly. I will not be your mistress or your secret. If you want me, you must want all of me. Publicly, completely. I wouldn't have it any other way. Then yes, she breathed, yes, I will stand with you, I will fight with you, and I will try, with everything I have, to be worthy of your faith in me. He pulled her close, and for the first time they embraced. Not a dance, not a formal touch, but a real embrace. The kind that spoke of partnership and promise. You are already worthy, he murmured against her hair. You have always been worthy. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside, something new and fragile and beautiful had taken root. The announcement appeared in the Morning Chronicle 3 days later. His Grace, the Duke of Silvermere, is pleased to announce his engagement to Miss Beatrice Harlow, niece of Baron Harlow. The wedding will take place at St. George's, Hanover Square in 6 weeks' time. London society erupted. Impossible. He's actually going through with it. The Duke has gone mad. That social climbing creature has somehow managed the impossible. Lady Constance threw her breakfast plate across her dining room, shattering it against the wall. Helen Ashford wept for 3 days straight, her chances at becoming a duchess destroyed. A dozen other mothers, whose daughters had been positioned as potential duchesses, descended into either rage or despair. But none of it mattered, because the Duke of Silvermere had made his choice, and nothing would change it. The 6 weeks before the wedding were the most difficult of Beatrice's life. She moved to the Duke's London estate, where his mother had taken up residence to oversee preparations. The Dowager Duchess of Silvermere was a formidable woman, tall and imposing, with steely grey hair and eyes that saw everything. Their first meeting took place in the library, surrounded by books that had been in the family for generations. "So," the Dowager said, studying Beatrice like a specimen, "you are the young woman who has captured my son's heart." "Your Grace," Beatrice curtsied perfectly. "I hope to prove worthy of his regard." "Worthy?" The older woman's lips twitched. "Child, do you know how many worthy young ladies I have paraded before Adrian over the years? Dozens. All impeccable breeding, all substantial dowries, all perfectly trained in the duties of a duchess." Beatrice's heart sank. Here it came, the rejection she had been bracing for. "And do you know what they all had in common?" The Dowager continued. "No, Your Grace." They bored him absolutely senseless. A smile broke through, transforming her severe features. "But you, Miss Harlow, you make him laugh, you make him think. Most importantly, you make him happy. For that alone, I would welcome you as a daughter." Beatrice felt her knees go weak with relief. "Thank you, Your Grace. I promise I will work hard to learn." "You will make mistakes," the Dowager interrupted. "You will use the wrong fork. You will forget which title belongs to which family. Society will watch you like hawks, waiting for you to fail. And when you do," she reached out, taking Beatrice's hand, "you will stand up, brush yourself off, and continue. Because you are stronger than they know, and you have something they can never take from you." "What is that?" "Adrian's love, and mine." The Dowager squeezed her hand. "Now come. We have much work to do and very little time. If we're going to scandalize society, we might as well do it in the most spectacular fashion possible." And spectacular it was. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright. St. George's, Hanover Square, filled with every important member of London society. Some came to witness the union. Others came hoping it would somehow fail at the last moment. In a private dressing room, the Dowager Duchess herself helped Beatrice into her wedding gown. It was a creation of ivory silk and Belgian lace, far simpler than fashion dictated, but perfect in its elegance. "How do you feel?" the Dowager asked, fastening the final button. "Terrified," Beatrice admitted. "Excited, grateful, afraid I might wake up." "Then let me assure you," the older woman said, turning her to face the mirror, "you are most definitely awake, and you look every inch a duchess." The woman in the mirror was barely recognizable. The same plain features, yes, but transformed by happiness into something approaching beautiful. A knock at the door announced the arrival of the Duke's closest friend and best man, Viscount Pemberton. "His Grace asks if you're ready, Miss Harlow, and he wants you to know that if you need more time, all of London can wait." Beatrice smiled. So very like Adrian, always putting her comfort first. "Tell His Grace," she said firmly, "that I have waited long enough. I'm ready now." The ceremony was a blur. Beatrice walked down the aisle alone, her uncle having declined to participate. But she didn't feel alone, not with the Dowager Duchess beaming from the front pew, not with the Duke's radiant smile as she approached, not with the knowledge that against all odds she had found where she belonged. "Dearly beloved," the bishop intoned, "we are gathered here today." Beatrice hardly heard the words. She was lost in Adrian's eyes, in the warm strength of his hands holding hers, in the impossible reality that this remarkable man had chosen her. I, Adrian Thornwood, take thee, Beatrice Harlow. His vows rang clear and strong, echoing through the ancient church. When it was her turn, Beatrice's voice trembled only slightly. I, Beatrice Harlow, take thee, Adrian Thornwood. And then, at last, the bishop pronounced them husband and wife. Your Grace, the bishop said with a smile, you may kiss your bride. The Duke, her husband, drew her close. Hello, Duchess, he murmured, just for her ears. Hello, husband, she whispered back. The kiss was tender and proper, and absolutely perfect. When they turned to face the congregation as the Duke and Duchess of Silvermere, the applause was surprisingly genuine. Perhaps some of society's members had harder hearts than they'd thought, or perhaps true love really could triumph over prejudice. At the wedding breakfast, held at the Duke's palatial London home, Beatrice found herself accepting congratulations from people who had snubbed her mere weeks before. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt hollow. These people had not changed. They simply now valued her because of who she had married. Lady Constance approached, her smile brittle. Your Grace, such a beautiful ceremony. I'm certain you will be very happy. Thank you, Lady Constance, Beatrice replied politely. I appreciate your kind words. I hope, Lady Constance continued, her voice dropping, that you understand how fortunate you are. A girl in your position, elevated so far above her station, you must be grateful every moment. Something inside Beatrice, something that had been bending and accommodating for years, finally snapped. I am grateful, she said clearly, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Grateful that I met a man who values character over circumstances. Grateful that I found love with someone who sees me as a person rather than a pedigree. But if you are implying that I should be grateful to you or to society for accepting what you had no power to prevent, then you are mistaken. The room had gone quiet. Lady Constance's face reddened. I am a duchess now, Beatrice continued, her voice steady. Not because I schemed or manipulated or compromised anyone, but because a good man chose to love me. And if that makes you uncomfortable, Lady Constance, I suggest you examine why. Perhaps it's because you measure worth in pounds and pedigree, and it galls you that happiness can be found elsewhere. She turned away, finding Adrian watching from across the room. He raised his glass to her in silent salute, pride clear in his expression. The Dowager Duchess appeared at her elbow, her eyes twinkling. Well done, my dear. That's been needed for quite some time. I hope I didn't embarrass you, Beatrice said quietly. Embarrass me, child? I'm delighted. The Silvermere family has been far too polite for far too long. It's refreshing to have someone willing to speak truth. She patted Beatrice's hand. You're going to do just fine. That evening, as the last guests departed and the newlyweds prepared to leave for the Duke's country estate, Adrian found Beatrice standing on the terrace, looking out over the torch-lit gardens. Regretting it already? He asked, joining her. Never, she replied, leaning into his warmth. Though I may have made an enemy of Lady Constance permanently, she was already your enemy. You simply stopped pretending otherwise. He wrapped an arm around her waist. You were magnificent today. Not just beautiful though you were, but brave. Standing up to people who have tormented you for years. I learned from the best, she said, tilting her head to look up at him. You stood up for me when you had no reason to, when doing so cost you dearly. It cost me nothing that mattered, he corrected, and gained me everything. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Come, our carriage waits. I want to show you our home. Our home, Beatrice repeated softly. I like the sound of that. As they rode through the night toward Silvermere Park, the Duke's ancestral estate, Beatrice reflected on the impossible journey that had brought her here, from wallflower to duchess, from invisible to envied, from resigned to hopeful. "What are you thinking?" Adrian asked, his arm around her in the privacy of the carriage. "I'm thinking about that night at the ball," she admitted. "When Lady Constance said I would never find a husband, I believed her. I thought I knew exactly what my life would be. Small, quiet, forgotten. And now I realize that the life I thought was certain was simply the life others had decided for me. But you saw something different, something more, and you gave me permission to see it too." "You always had that something more," Adrian said firmly. "I simply recognized it." They arrived at Silvermere Park near midnight. The great house rose before them, its windows glowing with welcome. Servants lined the steps, ready to greet their new duchess. As Beatrice stepped from the carriage and looked up at her new home, she felt a moment of pure vertigo. This was real. This vast estate, this title, this extraordinary man, all of it was real. The housekeeper stepped forward, cursing deeply. "Your Grace, welcome to Silvermere Park. We are honored to serve you." Beatrice took a breath, straightening her shoulders. She was a duchess now, and whatever that meant, she would learn, would grow into this role that seemed far too large for someone like her. But as Adrian took her hand and led her up the steps, she realized something important. She didn't have to fill the role perfectly. She didn't have to become someone else. She simply had to be herself, the self that Adrian loved, the self that was finally miraculously enough. 6 months passed. Beatrice settled into her new life with more grace than anyone had expected. She made mistakes, yes, forgot names, mixed up precedents, occasionally used the wrong term of address. But she also brought changes that gradually won over even the most skeptical members of society. She opened the Silvermere estate to local families, hosting educational programs for young women. She funded a lending library in the village. She used her position to advocate for causes she believed in, surprising Parliament with her intelligence during discussions her husband brought home. And slowly, grudgingly, society began to accept that perhaps the Duke had not made such a poor choice after all. At a ball held to celebrate their 6-month anniversary, Beatrice stood in the exact spot where she had once hidden among potted ferns. But now, everything was different. "Your Grace," Lady Pemberton approached, genuine warmth in her expression. "I must tell you, the education initiative you've started has been transformative for the village girls. My own daughter has benefited greatly." "I'm so glad," Beatrice replied. "Every girl deserves the chance to learn, regardless of her circumstances." Helena Ashford, surprisingly, also approached. She looked thinner, sadder, but there was something in her expression that suggested growth. "Your Grace," she said quietly, "I owe you an apology. The things I said, the way I treated you, I was cruel, and I'm sorry." Beatrice studied her for a moment. The easy thing would be to dismiss the apology, to hold on to the hurt. But she had learned that bitterness only poisoned the one who carried it. "Thank you for your apology," she said gently. "I accept it, and I hope you will find your own happiness, Helena. True happiness, not the kind that comes from titles or jewels, but from being valued for who you truly are." Helena's eyes filled with tears. She nodded once and withdrew, leaving Beatrice with a sense of peace she hadn't expected. "That was kind of you," Adrian murmured, appearing at her side. "I remembered something you told me once," Beatrice replied, "that you valued authenticity. I think Helena's apology was authentic. It would have been cruel to reject it." He took her hand, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "You continue to amaze me, Duchess. Only because you gave me the chance to be amazing," she said. "Before you, I was convinced I was nobody, nothing, destined for obscurity. And now I know that being nobody's daughter doesn't mean you are nobody. That circumstances don't define worth, and that sometimes," she smiled up at him, "the most unlikely love stories are the truest ones." The orchestra struck up a waltz, the same waltz they had danced that first night. Adrian bowed formally, extending his hand. "May I have this dance, Duchess?" "Now and always," she replied, placing her hand in his. As they moved across the floor, Beatrice caught sight of her reflection in a nearby mirror, and for the first time in her life she liked what she saw. Not because she had gained a title or wealth or position, but because she finally saw herself as Adrian had always seen her. Worthy, strong, enough. The music swelled. The candles flickered, and in the heart of London society, a former nobody danced with her duke, proving once and for all that love sees what the world cannot. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to know that they are enough, exactly as they are, that true worth isn't found in bank accounts or bloodlines, but in character and courage. Drop a comment below telling us which moment moved you most. Was it the first dance, the public proposal, or perhaps the wedding day? Your thoughts inspire us to create more stories celebrating genuine love and human dignity. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more Victorian romance tales, where honor triumphs over prejudice, where love conquers cruel society, and where the most unlikely hearts find their perfect match. The next story is already waiting for you. Continue this journey of emotion, transformation, and timeless romance with us.